Maриинский, this is my fourth time here at the Maриинский. The first time I was here in 1991 was for a production of this opera. Then I returned for the Makropoulos case, Janacek, and then 2 years ago, Boris Godunov. And now a new version of Prokofiev's amazing opera. I mean, look at a great novel, no? Look at Tolstoy, for instance. The first time I read it, I was 13. I'm now 60. So I read it at the end of last year when I was 59. I've read it 2 other times, once in 1991 when I came before. So the book I read when I was 13 is not the book I read when I was 59. The words on the page are exactly the same. What Tolstoy wrote onto the page seems to be objective. Through the experience of a 13-year-old, I see one story. Some things become important, some things go away. I don't know about love so much. The death doesn't touch me. It's objective. Some excitement and love is fascinating. The war is thrilling. All sorts of different things. I go to it when I'm 36, 7. I am 2 years into the great love of my life. I am incredibly happy at that point of my life. Everything's going really well. So I see in the novel extraordinary, beautiful, affirmative things about life, about nature, about confronting death, about the greatness of love. Everything seems to me beautifully, profoundly positive. I come to it at 59, I'm much closer to death than I was at 35. I've been through disillusionment with love as well as happiness. I've been through pain and loss. I've been through much more. I see a whole different book. That is how it is with every single person. There is no objective novel, just as there is no objective opera. Every single person carries their own work of art when they read or see and hear it. It's its beauty, it's its miracle. And the greater the work of art, the fresher and the more individual is the response of each person to the work of art. That's my starting point. So I think that essentially Prokofiev wanted to write the story of Andrei, Natasha, and Pierre Bezukhov. They are the essence of the story. But during the course of this non-novel, he theorizes and approaches the idea of history. To look at the abstraction of history, he uses the particular of one moment. But what he's interested in doing is drawing out principles, theories, and ideas for which this one moment is an example. He's using the one moment as an example of all moments. That is the Tolstoyan technique. He uses small lives are what he's fascinated by. Individuals, that's the forefront, the foreground of everything. And you see all of these lives play out with their profound psychology and philosophy against a background of history which is almost impervious to human behavior and decision. We cannot affect the progress of history. And so you see the small lives struggling to come to terms with life, love, death, against the background of this great movement that we cannot affect. That's the essential momentum of Tolstoy. So he doesn't examine the historical moment. Far from it. He creates the sense of history in the story, maybe just with a hat, with a fan, with a moment. It's not detailed historical description, ever. But obviously here, we're not dealing with Tolstoy's novel. We're dealing with a work of art by Prokofiev. And a work of art stands on its own feet. So when you go to a performance of this opera, you don't carry the entire knowledge of a 1,000-page novel with you. What you have are the words and the music of the work of art. That's the job of theatre, is to create an actuality now in front. Not a history lesson, not a memory test for a novel that you might have read at school, not an imitation of a wonderful movie that you might have seen that was already a great movie director's interpretation of a novel that is distancing you all the time from the source material. So what you have in the opera is already the enormous interpretation of the composer's choices. What he chooses to put in, what he chooses to leave out. Huge interpretation. Secondly, you have the interpretation of the way it's composed, the life, the colour of the music. That again bends your response enormously to what you hear. What you don't hear, you don't hear. I'm not interested in people telling me what's not in the opera, because it's not in the opera. It's not happening. It's not there. It doesn't really matter, because we can't have the experience of a 1,000-page novel while we sit in the theatre of this opera. We can have an experience of this opera. And Prokofiev has done a very strong, individual 20th century take on a very long 19th century novel. So it's already not Tolstoy. Piece is a difficult word, and marvellous, I think, and much better for the book and for an idea that the word mere expresses so much more than just piece, that also has the alternative meaning of the world. And the sense of those two things are, I think, much closer to what Tolstoy is writing about. There is no time in the novel when there isn't war. War is from the very first page. People are talking about war. War is threatened. We've just had a war. It's not peace. It's a little brief breath between actual war. So we're not neither are we now, in a world without war. We might not be fighting, but we're very close. It's around us. It's on our television screens, it's on our radios, whether it's from wherever it is, we have consciously a sense that the human state is never very far away from war. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is many, and that's what I'm trying to say. And that's beautiful, of course, and I hate the word peace translated in English. That's what I'm saying. It's so small compared to the actual title. That's right, and I think that's the sense, because it reduces the first half to a silly title, whereas all of the book has war. Listen, I'm having a wonderful time, and that's why I came. No, I love it here. I love working. Marvelous artists, such a rich depth of company. No, and I'm excited. This time, a lot of very young singers in the leading roles, which is wonderful. Wonderful for the story, and wonderful now because I see that one of the things at the heart of the piece is about youth, is about spring, is about the spring, is about the urge to live, impatience, greed, hunger, appetite. So Natasha is the spirit of life, which is amoral. She is neither good nor bad. She's impatient, and she has the greed of the will to live. That I now see. And when we're older, we see it, we look at the young and we think they're impatient, they're greedy, they're ambitious, but it's not. It's the part of us that is desire, that is impatience, that is the need to experience life. It was bizarre and stupid of Bolkonsky to make her wait the year, and cunning of his father, because it could never have happened. It was cruel and absolutely could never have happened. To ask somebody that age to sacrifice a year of their life in waiting is not honest. So I think examining the motives of the story is really, for me, exciting, because the characters are so many-sided. Nobody comes out completely good. Bezukhov maybe is the closest to an only good person. He doesn't really commit a bad act. but he is guilty of an absurd naivety for a while. And what is very interesting is the way the opera exaggerates or highlights the innocent looking at the apparent beauty of going into battle. The thrill of people together getting ready to fight, and contrasts it with the horrible truth after the massacre that was Borodino, and the terrible experience and the journey of Pierre Bezukhov in part 2, the awful and horrifying truth when he sees hundreds of thousands of people ultimately die. And the way he goes from the beauty and the shining innocence of loving the idea that these young people aren't afraid to die, they're going heroically to fight. And then when he sees them die, when he realizes how horrifying, that sometimes it has to be, but nothing makes it beautiful. It's a very big journey, I think.